an issue with Voyager 1 when this spacecraft is billions of miles away and, get this, stuck loop. They were able to stop that chip from what it was doing and move the memory that it was storing elsewhere. And just a few days ago, Sarah, they were able to get their first readable, understandable signal from Voyager 1. So it is back and it is sending us, we're not getting those images there of Jupiter and Saturn that you're seeing. I mean, those are the images that Voyager is so well known for. But everything else is just gravy now, Sarah.
Yeah, only supposed to last 5 years. That's kind of how my professors in college thought I would last. But there is no way in journalism. But there's no way I'm lasting 46. I can tell you that. So kudos to Voyager 1. Kristen Fisher, thank you so much for all your reporting there. Kate.
That's hilarious.
Sad but true.
So many years. We're gonna have so many
It's been a
years
while.
together.
There's love here for you. There's love.
We're like space satellites and stuff. That's exactly right. Okay, the Senate, not a space satellite. The Senate is ready to act today. What could be the final stop for the foreign aid package before it heads to the president after months of fighting, really infighting among House Republicans? This is where they have landed. A $95 billion package that includes $61 billion for Ukraine, $26 billion for Israel, and $8 billion for Taiwan and the Indo-Pacific. But you also see there, now attached to all of this, a move that would ban TikTok in the United States or force the China-based parent company to sell it off. CNN's Lauren Fox tracking all of this for us. Lauren, what are we going to see happen in the Senate today?
Yeah, the Senate was supposed to be on recess this week, Kate, but they view this package, this aid package, as so crucial and so necessary that lawmakers returned in order to try to get this through the United States Senate. What we expect to see today is at 1 p.m., they will begin a series of procedural votes. Now, there are still negotiations happening between Republican and Democratic leadership to try to find some kind of an agreement to expedite this process and potentially get a final vote on this package today. That agreement has not been reached, though, so there is a possibility that the Senate will come back tomorrow to try to finally finish this work up. But again, lawmakers were supposed to be gone, and oftentimes jet fumes can be really motivating when it comes to getting Senate agreements to move things through the process more quickly. You're also going to see sort of this moment for Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, which I think is just really important to point out. He has been a leader on this issue, has been talking about the importance of getting Ukraine additional aid despite some opposition from conservatives, despite shrinking Republican public polling that showed Republican voters were growing less supportive of the package. He was out there at every turn, almost every day in the United States Senate, giving a floor speech in his opening where he would talk about the importance of this issue. So it's a very big day for Minority Leader Mitch McConnell as well.
That's a really good point. All right, let's see what happens. It's good to see you, Lauren. Thank you very much. A new hour of CNN News Central and our special live coverage of Donald Trump's trial back in court starts right now.
This is CNN Breaking News.
Coverage of the criminal trial of Donald Trump here in New York City. I am not too far from the courthouse right now, where Trump is about to face a hearing on a gag order. That is before testimony resumes. The first witness who will be there is David Pecker. He was on the stand briefly yesterday. He will get right back on that stand at 11 a.m. today. But first, very shortly, we could see Donald Trump walk through these halls, enter the courtroom. and then a hearing to determine if he has violated a gag order over the last several days, with all kinds of posts on social media that have at least directly or obliquely mentioned witnesses in this case. Let's go right outside the courthouse now. CNN's Bryn Gingras standing by. Bryn, what do we expect to see?
Yeah, John, let's first just remind viewers what that gag order is. It was put in place against Donald Trump at the end of March. Essentially, the judge said to Trump, you cannot post, you cannot talk disparagingly about the jury in this case, witnesses, court staff, and their family members. And since that was put in place, the prosecution has said that he has violated that at least 10 times. And they're asking the judge to fine Trump $1,000 for each of those fines. They also would like the judge to remind Donald Trump, listen, you're the criminal defendant in this case, and he should be treated as such, essentially saying that, like all criminal defendants, he's subject to court supervision. So what we'll be looking out to see is, will the judge fine him? Will he threaten him possibly going to jail for violating this gag order? Of course, it's no secret in his civil trial that happened last year, Donald Trump was fined thousands of dollars for violating the gag order against him for that trial more than once. So certainly we are looking out to see how the judge handles this. Trump, in his defense, has said, listen, I have people like a main witness in this case, Michael Cohen, lashing out at me. I have to be able to defend myself. So we expect that argument to be said in court today. That gag hearing kicks off when court kicks off at 9:30, and as you said, the former president is inside the courthouse right now.
You know, speed and order, the two, I think, main driving forces behind Judge Juan Merchan. We will watch him in play very shortly. Bryn, thank you very much for that. With me here, CNN anchor Caitlin Collins and CNN Chief Legal Affairs Correspondent Paula Reed. Paula, I do understand you've got some new reporting on how the Trump team intends to address this first issue today.
That's right. We'll see some familiar arguments during today's hearing. They're going to argue that this gag order is unconstitutional. They emphasize the fact that Trump is a candidate for the White House, and they try to argue that this is all political speech, the things that he says about this trial. Now, so far, that has not been a successful argument. As we all know, there are limits to political speech, and this is the first time we've ever had a candidate for the White House as a criminal defendant. He is subject to some limitations, including this gag order. But they're going to focus on three specific people today that they believe should not be covered by this gag order. The first is the judge, Juan Merchan, who is not covered by the gag order, but they're going to revisit the issue of him being conflicted. That's what they argue because of his daughter's political work on behalf of some Democrats. Now, she is now covered by the gag order, so they're going to bring that up and argue that they believe that should not be legal. Now, they're also going to focus on a familiar target, Michael Cohen. And he is, of course, a witness in this case. Trump can't attack witnesses, but they're going to point out that this is unilateral. Yes, that is how gag orders work. The defendant cannot attack a witness. But if you take a look at Michael Cohen's social media, he is calling Trump things that I can't even report on air. And they're going to argue that that is unfair. And they're also going to take aim at one of the prosecutors, Matthew Colangelo. And they're going to say that, look, the fact that Trump can't speak out about him means that Trump can't talk about the time that that prosecutor spent at the Biden Justice Department. That's very common for prosecutors to spend time at the Justice Department, then go to other high-profile prosecuting offices. But these are going to be the key arguments that they're going to focus on today. They're also going to try to argue that when he's quoting, we're seeing him quote more on social media as opposed to coming up with original attacks, that should not be covered by the gag order. If he's quoting someone else, we saw him, it was last week, he came out with a stack of articles and he was quoting from them. They say that if that is covered by the gag order, him quoting someone else, they believe it's overbroad. Now, I'm not sure any of these are going to be successful arguments, but this is how they're going to lay it out. And I think when it comes to something like Michael Cohen and how these are unilateral, in the court of public opinion, the average voter might say, yeah, that seems unfair, but legally speaking, this is the way it works.
It is interesting. Oh, so sorry. Just going to say everything that Trump seems to be talking about on social media and out loud concerns this hearing, not actually the testimony on the witness stand in this case that has already begun. It almost seems that this hearing is where he wants the focus to be.
Well, and it's interesting to see how the judge is going to take those arguments from the Trump team. So far, he has not responded well to them because, remember, he issued a gag order after Trump had continued attacking people in the DA's office, attacking the judge's family. Then he expanded that gag order. And so the question really is how he's going to handle this, because obviously the district attorney's office is asking for fines. Whether or not that actually is something that deters Trump from continuing could be another problem and challenge for Judge Merchan in the future. But also, Trump is not just talking about the judge's daughter or about the lead prosecutor here who was making that opening statement yesterday. He's also now talking about the jury, which is also forbidden by this gag order. And he was in an interview last night, John, and I just want you to listen to what he had to say about the jury.
That jury was picked so fast, 95% Democrats. The area is mostly all Democrat. You think of it as just a purely Democrat area. It's a very unfair situation, that I can tell you.
So in the gag order, he's not even supposed to say anything about the jury. He's not supposed to direct other people to say anything about the jury. And so we talked to some legal experts last night who said they do believe that's also a violation of this gag order. It's not expected to be brought up today. Maybe the prosecution will bring it up. But it just speaks to, we already had a concern yesterday when this hearing got started that a juror was worried about the attention that they were getting already. And we've seen, obviously, how this judge has had a lot of concern about the impact of Trump's statements on the judicial proceedings.
That was talking about the jury there out loud.
Yeah, and I think this is really going to have to be a focus for the judge today. I'm glad that you flagged this soundbite because, of course, you want to protect all the witnesses. You want to protect the prosecutor's family members. But the fact is, when it comes to the jury, if they have a critical mass of jurors who eventually just don't feel safe and they're being targeted, there could potentially be a mistrial. If you get to fewer than 12 jurors, the defense would need to agree to do it with 11, which obviously they're not going to do. So I think the judge has to pay special attention today to how the gag order protects and covers the jury.
And just to be clear, this jury isn't sequestered. I mean, they're at dentist appointments. They're coming in a little bit later this morning. They're not supposed to pay attention to media and what's covered out there, but it's hard not to hear these things.
Yeah, and also, when Trump says they're 95% Democrats, he's not just talking about the demographics. That's a criticism coming from Donald Trump. And I should note, obviously, his legal team had a role in picking this jury. They actually felt like they had a more favorable jury pool than they expected going into this. There's at least 2 people on it who have said nice things about Donald Trump, someone who follows him on Truth Social. And so it just speaks to Trump's view of this, of course. Yesterday was his first day in the courtroom, though, with that jury, and I think that's part of what led to that comment last night.
So the judge, in terms of what he has at his disposal, stern words, fines, and then, in theory, you can imprison people for contempt of court, Paula. But realistically, what is it that this judge can do?
Fines are probably the most likely first step. But again, you fine someone a couple $1,000s, tens of $1,000s, that's barely going to make a dent in Trump's bank account. So the judge has to think strategically, what is a proper deterrent here? You talked about possible jail time. Yes, that is on the far end of consequence, certainly not something that's likely to be considered today. But Trump has also said it would be his, quote, great honor to be jailed for violating this gag order. So a very difficult position for the judge to be in.
We got a shot from inside again, the courthouse right there. Whether or not we see people moving shortly, we will tell you when it happens. Caitlin, after this hearing, of course, David Pecker gets back up on the stand. And I have to say, I was glued to the TV all day yesterday. To both of you out here discussing his testimony, watching it unfold, at least with the banners on the side of the screen, reading out loud what was taking place. He says he engaged in checkbook journalism. That sets the table for what today, do you think?
Yeah, well, and just a reminder for everyone, obviously we don't have cameras inside the courtroom. That's as close as we get right outside the courtroom door that Trump goes into. But we'll have the statement of what is actually being said. What is David Pecker being asked? What's he answering? And today's going to get interesting because we know what the prosecution is driving at, which is that August 2015 meeting with Michael Cohen, Donald Trump, and David Pecker, where they were talking about how he could help suppress stories. That is kind of their 3-pronged narrative that they're making here, which is that he wanted to help publish good stories for Trump, kill negative stories, and smear his opponents in that. And what efforts did he take to do that? So it's going to be fascinating because David Pecker is not someone who's criticizing Donald Trump online like Michael Cohen is. They go way back. They are confidants. He was someone who wanted to help Donald Trump get into the White House. He was invited to the Oval Office. So to see him on that witness stand today, now that he and Trump no longer speak, will be fascinating.
And he was smiling in the courtroom, smiling on the stand, smiling as he walked past the defense table, Paula. Michael Moore, our friend from Georgia, says that a jury likes a story.
Yeah.
So what is the story that David Pecker is going to tell him? Why is it so important to get that out there?
He's such a critical witness to set the stage for the prosecution's case because while David Pecker was not directly involved in the hush money to Stormy Daniels or in the alleged paperwork crimes, he was part of an effort to suppress negative stories about then candidate Trump and to amplify bad stories about